Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's Power Hour by NextRev. My name is Jason Bland. I'm an application engineer for NextRev, and I'll be conducting today's Power Hour on Sheetmetal using Creo 2.0, and we'll be focusing on, some of the lesser used functionality. So let's go ahead and get started. I'd like to first discuss who NextRev is, and then we'll get into some of the courses we offer, and then I'll get into the details on the Sheetmetal tips and tricks. NextRev is a value-added reseller of PTC products. We're based in the Bay Area, San Francisco, and been in business for over 12 years now. Covering primarily the West Coast. Now, if you want any information about NextRev, there's your URL there, nextrev.com/training. If you want to sign up for any training, you're welcome to do so. We conduct training classes pretty much weekly. These are just some of the more common training courses you might see. And we pretty much train the full suite of products from PTC. Okay, so let's go ahead and start talking about some of the Sheetmetal tips and tricks that we'll be covering today. One of the things that I would say gets fairly underutilized with regards to Sheetmetal parts are the default parameters and design rules that you can build into your templates before you actually start creating your geometry. These are helpful to keep you from making mistakes, manufacturing types of mistakes in your design, for instance, using the design rules, or if you just want to save yourself time by defaulting things like a relief. So the V-notch is the default relief, but very few people actually use that. So you could default that, for instance, to an ob-round relief, and you could also default the bend radius, the thickness of the part, those sorts of things, and that'll save you time in having to edit the walls, the reliefs, corner reliefs of the walls as you build out the part. Those are going to just be kind of built in and working for you in the background. So I recommend using these, and PTC has done a really good job of adding a whole series of parameters. I'd say there's a couple dozen parameters that you can build into your start parts and your template, so that you start off with your template, and a lot of the work is done for you already. You're just kind of building out the walls of the Sheetmetal part that you're interested in creating. So I'm going to cover that. The other functionality that I find useful is using the info tools, reporting tools on the Sheetmetal part. Now, this can allow us to see things like the bend radii in a table form. So if we just want to do a quick check of our part, making sure that we're following, whatever type of rules or design checks that we build into it, if we violated any of those, we can, fairly complicated Sheetmetal part may take a while to look through and check visually, or by double-clicking on dimensions or whatnot. So we can actually view this in a table form, and actually save that table form out. One of the other things that changed recently, and the most recent version of Creo Pro E versions, is they added a preview window, which is very nice for seeing your flat pattern as you develop the part, as you're creating the developed formed part. you're able to see a flattened state of that part. And there's a few other little nice things in there, like being able to show the blank size it would take to create that part. Also, it'll do a visual interference check and making sure that if you flatten this part out, are you going to have, you know, these tabs interfering with each other? Have you created something that can't be flattened because of the nature of the geometry that you've created? So that's a nice little check there to go back and correct whatever mistakes you might have made. Reusing walls, you know, historically in older releases of Pro E, you know, it just wasn't possible to do. In my opinion, in the modeling world, simple things like patterning and mirroring of walls that you've already created, and that's now possible, and I'm going to show that very quickly. The other thing is reusing sections. So there's several areas we can use sections. One is fairly new to create parametric, and the others are just kind of like not that well known. So any time you're creating a flange or flat wall, you can put your own sketches in there, and you don't need to really stick to just the out-of-the-box shapes. The other is you're able to create sketch forms now, which is a very powerful tool that allows us to, you know, sketch in, you know, bring in some library of sketches, maybe a louver or something like that, sketch, and then build out that geometry all within one tool, the sketch form tool, that can add, you know, drafted surfaces or angled surfaces, rounds to the intersecting edges of to the rest of the part, and then also to the rest of that feature. So that's kind of a nice thing. And then also I wanted to talk about converting models, solid models, to sheet metal parts. And I'll just walk through a scenario where I take this solid model and convert it. And a lot of people work this way because it just makes more sense to them, I guess, to work in a solid model first and build out their part, and then they eventually convert it to a sheet metal part to be able to flatten it, and so you kind of work in reverse in a way, and it's important to know the commands that you have at your disposal to get that part flattened, because it can be tricky sometimes. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and start with the demo now. Okay, before I go too far, I wanted to just touch on Creo Parametric very quickly. Now, what you see here is the Creo Parametric 2.0 interface. Normally, we got this bar here, this toolbar sitting at the very top. So this is kind of out-of-the-box look. You have a ribbon UI. Microsoft certified ribbon UI. It looks similar to a lot of other CAD systems now, but it's important for PTC to stay Windows compliant, and so that's kind of what they've started to do. And so you have these ribbons that are basically task-based. You know, you have an analysis toolbar with your measuring tools. You have geometry reporting tools for industrial design type of applications, mass properties. Other applications that you might use, cabling, piping, are all located in this tab. You also have a stationary toolbar up here. So this is going to, no matter where you are in the tabs, you're going to have commands up here to be able to save, open, switch windows, close windows, erase not displayed. Those common commands that you find yourself in need of pretty much anywhere you are in the software. And then you also have this in Graphics Toolbar that gives you a little bit better, you know, access, a little bit easier access to things like the shading modes, which they've added, a kind of an outline shaded with edges view. Your datum displays. This can be customized. It can be moved around the interface. I can move it to the right of the interface if I want. I prefer it to be in the status bar out of the way, so I put it down here. Okay, so you can get to your views as well. Your zooming, if you like to zoom using boxes. And it can also be changed in size. Okay, so probably the most valuable and important thing to know about the new interface is this command search here. So if anyone that's new to the system, new to this interface, experienced users and new users can use this to find commands that maybe they wouldn't otherwise be able to find. Maybe it's buried down in some overflow tab, or it's just not added to the interface. Well, I can actually come in and do a search for that command. It's going to give me a list of commands, and if I hover over that command, it's going to highlight it for me in the interface. Now I can actually take it a step further, select down on that, and it'll actually start the command for me. So it's kind of a nice new addition to the software. I even use it sometimes if I'm feeling lazy that day and I don't want to go hunting for the command. I'll just type it in there and start the command from that location. Things like if I'm using map keys, for instance. Map key is not a button in the interface, although you can add it. You can customize your interface as much as you'd like. But I just get to my map keys this way. To customize the interface, you're just going to right mouse click and customize the quick access toolbar. And then from here we can customize the ribbon, the quick access toolbar, quite a bit of other things. So, and that's kind of one of the other really nice changes they made is they put all the Creo options, preferences, settings, all in one location in this options dialog box. So you got things like model display, a lot more check boxes and pull downs, and it keeps you from having to use the config.pro editor so much. You got your assembly options here. So they're going more in the direction of making these options and settings just a little bit more accessible. And you can get to that Creo options a few ways, like I did just now, or you can come in File and Options to get to there. Okay, so that's Creo Parametric. There's a lot of other enhancements that I won't be covering today. I'm just going to kind of stick to Sheetmetal. The first thing I wanted to show with Sheetmetal is the informational reporting tools. Now I'm going to actually come over to my Tools tab to get to that. And if I click the down arrow here, I'll be able to see this model info. Now you should be able to get to this also by just right mouse clicking and then say info and then model. What that's going to do is it's going to open an HTML page in the embedded browser. And it's going to give you some information about the model, its K and Y factor that were applied, for instance, or maybe even the bin table. And actually I can view that bin table by clicking here. And I can actually see the bin table that was used for this part. And it's going to have thickness versus radius. So based on the thickness, you're going to get, say, certain radius in that part. Now, that's driven by a formula, of course, so the formula is also being seen there. All right, and then a little bit further down, I have the bin allowance formulas. I have the bin radius. I can display, turn off non-90-degree walls if I'm not interested in those. And I also have toggles down here to show the different bin radii within that part. Also, and I'm going to get into this in a second, if there are any violations based on the rules that I gave myself or built into the start part when I first started this part, things like, I don't want features too close to walls. So I have this hole here, and it's fairly close to the edge of this wall, and that might be a problem for the parts that you're creating. So in this case, you see the rule is set to a minimum of 3 units, basically 3 times the thickness. And the thickness is 1, and you have the current value as 1. So that's a problem. And now I can actually, if it's got a lot of features in it, I can actually click on these, and it'll highlight the violation here in the table. Now, obviously, to fix that, I can move the hole away, and then run that info again. Let's just see. So yeah, so this obviously minimum cut to bound, minimum cut to bend. So this is actually a problem here, this hole. I'm actually going to have to add more material here to clear this hole of the rule that is checking to this bend and the rule that is checking to the edge of this part. So that's the reporting tools for the sheet metal part. Now, the defaults, which is probably the most handy and underutilized part of sheet metal parts, is going to be located under the File, Prepare, Model Properties dialog box. So you're going to go into there, and what you're going to see is Model Properties. Now, with a solid model, you don't get to see this section here because we're in the sheet metal part. You get to see all these default elements of the sheet metal part that we can control. So let's talk about the most basic one, which is the thickness. So if I wanted to change the default to 1, for instance, and so because my walls are being driven off the default values, it updates that part for me. Okay. What if we wanted to change, say, the way the bends come in? So let's go ahead and change that, and you'll see bends. Basically, the radius is just using the thickness, and so it's going to be 1. So let's actually make that 0.5, and then with the bend angle, the default bend angle is 90. So anytime I create a new wall, it's going to go to 90 degrees. All right, so let's actually create a new wall using the bend tool. We're actually just going to click on this edge, and the nice thing about the bend tool is I can use it a couple of different ways. I can come in and I can click on a surface like this, and I can just use these drag handles to go to either side of the wall that I'm trying to bend. So this will be used if you wanted to bend some existing wall, not creating a new wall necessarily, but you have this wall and now you want to just kind of bend it down. So you can see now I'm getting a preview, and those last 2 drag handles were just to place the bend line that I just placed on that surface. All right. Another way to use that tool is to come in and just click on one of the edges of the part. Now it's going to bend downwards if I select this edge, this direction, and it's going to bend upwards if I pick this edge. Let's just go the opposite direction here. And let me just flip my, it's actually trying to bend the entire part. So let me just flip my arrow, and I'm going to use this drag handle to just drag inwards towards the part. And you can see as I drag, it's going to give me a preview of that geometry. So that's a couple different ways to use it. You can also just sketch a straight line, sketch a line and use that as your bend line. So that bend tool is very helpful. And as you can see, my default values that I'm using are being used for the entire part. Okay, so now the default values can also be accessed through the parameters, which I'm going to talk about in a second. Now, whenever you start with a sheet metal part, you get these, and these were not parameters that I added as a user. These are just built into the sheet metal part, and you can actually come in and say, okay, that interface that I went into earlier, the properties allow me to change bend allowance factor, or whatever it might be, bend radius, bend, this is just another way to access those parameters. What's really nice about this is we can actually build some relations around it and make the parts even more intelligent by building relations into our parts to derive the geometry. So like in the case of the rules, let's go in. We're going to go over to our properties again. And a little bit further down, if I scan down to here, you'll see design rules. I want to actually build some rules for myself to keep myself from creating any geometry that's going to cause problems during the manufacturing process. I'll just call it my rules. I'm going to go with the defaults. Now, one of the things that I'm going to go ahead and try to deliberately violate is the minimum distance between cuts to the boundary, so the edges of the part, 2 times the thickness. All right, so we're going to save that to the model, say OK. And let's go ahead and check our rules, and you'll see when I do this, and I should be showing a violation here. So the current value is 250. My rule check is 500. Now let's go ahead and take a look at this part and see if I can find out where that is. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and click on the ID, and you can see that it's this slot shape that I've created that's causing the problem. Let's go ahead and modify that geometry. I'm just going to drag down. If I double-click on a feature, so that's another little tip there for you, and this actually is in modeling mode and in the Sheetmetal mode. One of the things I can do is if I double-click on a feature to edit it, which is the fastest way to jump into editing mode to get to the dimensions, it also throws me into auto regenerate. So one of the things I can do is I can hover over the sketches, right? And so you get that different arrowhead. You see the arrowhead looks like this now with the cross on it, and if I come over and hover over it, it turns into a arrowhead without a tail. That means I'm clicking, I'm right on top of a sketch, and if I select down with my left mouse button, I can actually drag and dynamically regenerate that. All right, and so once I'm done with that, once I want to accept that, I just double-click out here. It accepts that, and then I can run my rule again, my rule check. Okay, you can see design rules, rule violations check. There's no violations in this part now. Okay. Now let's talk about flattening a part. Now one of the things is I see quite often people trying to flatten their part with the unbend tool. The unbend tool is used for a different purpose, which I'll show next so you can see how the unbend and the bend back might be used. Now you can certainly flatten the part out this way, but the proper way to do it is to use the flat pattern. Now the flat pattern can then be suppressed in a family table. You can create your flattened part and your formed part, have those both in the drawing so that people see the flattened state. But let me show you a faster way to do this. So I'm going to use what's new to, I believe, Creo Parametric 2.0. It came out, and that's this preview window. Let me actually get this over to the right here. So you can see the formed part, and you see the flattened state of that part as well. I can bring in maybe the dimensions that would indicate the size of blank sheet metal that I would need to create this part. So you see it's 157 and some change, and then you got 110, and I see the formed part over here. Now let me just show you one thing. One of the things I can do is I can show overlapping geometry. If this thing gets flattened out and I have some overlapping geometry, that could be a problem. So I'm just going to deliberately put something kind of silly in here to show you how this would work. I'm just going to drag that wall out some, extend it out using the extend tool. And you can see up here in this corner, I do have a area where if these two tabs were flattened out, they would interfere with each other. So then I would know right away that I need to go in and I need to fix that problem. But coming back to creating your flattened state, and there's this other command here, which basically creates your flattened part, your flattened version of this part, and creates the family table for you, adds it to the family table, suppresses that flattened feature for the formed part automatically for you. So I'm just going to click right on that. It's asking me what I want to name it. Typically, we take out the number. There's not going to be more than one flattened version of this, and we'll go ahead and create it. Now that's been created. You can see the flat pattern has been added. It's been suppressed automatically. If I wanted to see the flattened part, I can actually go into session here. Let's go find it. There it is. Right, there it is. Get your bin notes, and you also get bin center lines as well, these axes. So yeah, I recommend using the preview window whenever possible to get an indication of if you have any errors, any sort of design flaws. One of the other things they added recently, I'd say in the last few releases, is the ability to mirror. Now you think, okay, well that's a pretty basic thing, but it was at one point an issue to do this. You could do it, but it required some work. So I'm going to mirror this existing set of walls here that have been created. There's 3 flats and 3 flanges, and I don't want to have to recreate those again. So I'm going to group those up, and I'm going to mirror them about a plane. Now you might be asking, okay, well, where's the mirror command? Well, if you've ever mirrored before in the modeling mode, you know that you need to select the features first. It's a object action workflow. You select the feature, you do the action. And the command itself is placed in this editing pull down. Now let's say I do a lot of mirroring. I'm going to go ahead and show you how you would customize your ribbon to show something you might not see out in the interface, but you want it to be there. It's an overflow tab. I'm actually going to come in, go into my customized interface, just kind of move this out of the way, and then just take the mirror and I'm going to drag it up into the interface. Now it's a small button, maybe it's something I use a lot, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to right mouse click it, I'm going to make it a large button, and that way now I've kind of made it so that it's more easily accessible for me. Okay. And it wants to know if I want to save the change. I'm going to go ahead and say no there. Now let's go back to mirroring. We're going to select that. We're going to select mirror. The only requirement now is the plane. So I'm going to mirror across that plane. And then I'm going to mirror again both of these groups across this plane. Okay, so now I've just duplicated those features. And for any of you that have used mirroring before, this parent geometry is what's going to drive all the rest of these features. So you don't need to change the other guys. And the same with patterning. It's the same story. I have some features that I want to duplicate. I want to create this tab that goes across. All I'm going to do is make a selection of those, group them together, and then pattern. In this case, I'm going to do a direction pattern. The direction pattern is the easiest. All I need to do is select an edge or a plane for the direction. I'll select an edge. I want to go in this direction instead of the opposite direction, let's say 20 units. And let's see, I want, maybe 4 to 5, let's say 6 of those pattern across. So now you see those guys. And it carries along all of the attributes that you built in. In this case, we have, an ob-round relief in there. And we just have a couple of walls built into that. Okay, so here's probably one of the really nice things that I like about the new forms tools. So we've always had this punch form where you brought in a part that had basically the positive impression of what you would want to leave behind. So maybe like I don't know, a louver or something like that. And then you just assembled that part, and then it would just disappear, and then you would be left with a louver in that location. Now, that's kind of nice, but it is more picks, and I don't know that it's as intuitive sometimes as you might need. So this sketched form is an addition to the forming tools. If I start this, what I'm doing is I'm just clicking on a surface to sketch on. Let's do something like a louver shape. I'll do my best to get this in here. Yeah. All right. We'll put in a couple arcs. It's going to be a kind of a rough estimate of a louver. Now let me just constrain this and clean it up a little bit. Let me turn my hidden line mode on so you can see. What I'd like to do is make these two equal to each other, these two arcs. Constraining in sketcher mode. So, these constraints have been used for years. A better way, a faster way is to just select those two, right mouse click, and then you could make those tangent, equal, whatever it might be. Just right mouse click it again, make it equal. You can see as I constrain this, I'm simplifying the sketch and making it easier to dimension and see what's going on. Okay, so I got some geometry in there. All right, so I'm just going to say OK to that. Now, as you can see, the preview is basically just almost like an extrude and a shell in one step. It's actually shelling the height of this extrude, I guess you could call it. Now I could flip the direction of that if I need to. Change the height by using my drag handles or just keying in the value directly. In addition to that, I can come up here and I can actually exclude a surface. So let's say, it's because this is a louver, I want to exclude this front face here. So I'm going to exclude that. Now you see that is open up. Now, the other thing I might want to do is add some taper to this. So let's go ahead and turn that on. We're going to use this drag handle to just drag some taper into this feature. And then maybe I want to place some rounds in here. Now the thickness is fairly thick, so let me just change this to it's 1, I guess. Let's change it to 0.25. Let's see if that works. Okay. Yep. So there we go. We got a radius here. And we also have it for our other location. Let me just turn that on as well. Let me turn it off so you can see different radiuses there. Okay, and so then once I accept that, I'm left with a nice formed feature in there. Now, what I would recommend is if you do use this a lot and you're using a lot of the same features, then what you would do is you would just have a library of sketches. What I would do is likely, if I liked the way this turned out, I probably need to do a little more work to it to get it looking good. What I'd want to do is save this sketch. So while you're in sketcher mode, you just hit the save button, and that's going to save it out as a louver, which we could rename. Okay, and then use the palette to access that. So the palette has some standard shapes in it, stars, shapes, whatever, cross. And we can actually add our own tab to this and include all of our own shapes to it and be able to reuse those sketches. When you reuse a sketch, what you do is you just place it down. You're able to move it around, rotate it, resize it, scale it. And then once you're done placing that, you got this predefined sketch in there, saving you some time. Okay. All right. Okay, I'm going to move on to converting a part. Now, start off with something a little simpler here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to model up just a typical box type of feature using the Extrude tool. All right, this is just a basic solid feature that now I've decided I want to convert into a sheet metal part. Okay, so how do I do that? There's a way of converting this to a sheet metal part, but once you get there, there's some work to do. So now I have the button pulled out into the interface, convert to sheet metal. But out of the box, you're going to find that command down into this Operations Overflow tab. Down in there, you're going to see convert to sheet metal. When you start this command, it wants to know how you want to convert this sheet metal part. I'm going to tell you that the easiest way is to use the shell tool. So you could actually shell this ahead of time if you wanted, and then convert it. But all the shell is doing is ensuring that you have a uniform wall thickness. Now, if I were just to say OK here, what that's going to do, it's going to give me a uniform wall thickness, but it's basically a hollowed out box. I need to actually remove some of the sides here because eventually I'm going to want to flatten this out. So what I do is I just start selecting the sides that I want to remove. So let's just say these two sides, and I'm using my whole control key to select more than one side. All right, maybe those three edges or those three sides. Let's just leave what we have here, and we'll say OK. Now, because we've converted it to a sheet metal part, I now have sheet metal commands available to me when I didn't before. Okay, so that's going to allow me to flatten it. Now let's try to flatten this part. Now you can see model is not fully flattened, and that's because these two walls here fused together. We have no bends in our part. We have no reliefs in our part. So let's add some of those features. And again, this is kind of working in reverse. So what we need to do, what I like to do first anyway, is add my edge bends. This is probably the easiest tool in sheet metal to use. You're going to come into that down arrow where we accessed the bend tool before, and you're going to click on edge bend. And now you're just going to click on these edges, and you can see that it's added the default round or default bend is the thickness of the part. Now I can change it away from that if I want, but I'm good with this, so I'm going to say OK. Now let's try to flatten it, and we'll see that it still cannot be flattened, and that's because these two walls are still fused together. Preview is not available. Surfaces cannot be unbent. This is another error that you may get when you're trying to unbend something that's not fully developable. So your geometry needs to be developable, and in this case I have just a basic box, so eventually I will be able to flatten this out. But something like like a conical, not a conical shape, yeah, maybe a conical shape, or maybe a parabola that you've built, using a parabola to build your geometry, maybe some sort of reflector of some kind. Those would require more work. You'd have to put more rips in it, and a rip is what I'm going to be putting in next. This rip here, I need to place at this corner. So now you're getting a preview here where it's actually chopped away some material. You can see these walls coming together at this corner. Now, I can actually change the way those come together. I can actually have them overlap in one direction or another. So you can see the wall, this wall is overlapping this wall. I can add gaps to it, just like I can with my flats and flanges. Actually, I'm sorry, the flanges. And you can also put in a gap between those walls, and you can also do a blind gap where you can actually control both sides offset. I'm just going to go with an overlap in this case. Okay, so now I should be able to flatten this part. Okay, so you can see that it's actually flattening out for me, but I have this corner relief that I really don't like. It's the rip relief that I really don't see get used a whole lot. So I actually want to edit that rip relief right there. I'm going to come into my corner relief here. I'm sorry, the corner relief, a corner rip relief, and I'm going to basically look for the note that's defining that. You can see there, and I'm going to use the arrow without the lightning bolt to select that. And then we're going to go with an obround relief instead. Now at this point, I have a lot more control over the geometry. I can, go 2 times the thickness to push that relief in to the part, 2 times the thickness to make it larger, and I can use maybe a rectangular relief if I wanted. Let's just go with that one. So I'm going to say OK there. And now I have my rectangular relief. I got rid of the rip relief. It's still able to flatten it, show the blank size that I might need, and move on. Now I wanted to touch on, the real purpose behind the bend, the unbend and the bend back. I'm going to use an example here where what I want to do is I want to take the center section of this out and have it elevated so that I have a kind of a clip. It's going to actually just continue across. It's going to be more or less like a clip type of part here. So what I want to do is actually sketch something onto this surface, but I want it to be flattened before I do that. I wouldn't use the flat pattern for that because the flat pattern is always going to be at the end and keeping that part flat. I want to do an intermediate step where I flatten this part out, and that's going to be the unbend. So I'm actually going to use this surface as the fixed surface instead of that bottom surface. And now I can sketch on this surface as a flat surface. Let me go ahead and do that. And I'm actually going to put an extruded cut through this. So anytime you do an extruded cut through a part, a sheet metal part, it's going to go all the way through. There's no depth options, and it's going to be removing, in this case, it's going to remove geometry. So let's just put some shape in here like this. And we'll go with put a couple arcs in. Let me trim away the excess material using my delete segment command. Let's just put a straight line in there. I want to shorten this up a little bit. I use that straight line to allow me to trim away this material here. Now I need one more segment taken out of there. All right. Let me just pull this back a bit. Okay, so now that's going to give me, if I just say OK here, you'll see it's going to cut away that material. I have this tab here that I want to, basically what I want to do with this part is I want to bend it back to its original state. So because I use that unbend feature, I'm able to bend it back to its original state. It remembers that unbend. So I'm going to say bend back, and so now you see it's bending it back to its original state. Now, one of the variations of this I want to do is actually I want this this piece here to stay flat, going straight across, basically up here at the level of this wall here. So one of the options in here is to basically keep this flat, keep that section flat. You can see now I have, I don't know if you want to call this a money clip, paper clip, whatever you want to call it. So that's how you use the bend and unbend and bend back features. Some of the other things that I'd say have been improved are in Sheetmetal are the fact that you're basically not going to see the menu manager much anymore, especially with all of the most commonly used commands. And things like edge, extending edges, those were things that you had to jump into the menu manager to use. I can click on an edge. Not only can I extend an edge, but I can shorten that edge up by dragging in the opposite direction. Okay. So now I'm going to go ahead and end the presentation here. And what I'd like to do is if there are any questions about any of the functionality that I showed, this will be the time to ask. If you have any questions for us after this presentation, you can go to our NextRev website. It's nextrev.com. Contact us at this phone number, or you can contact me directly at my email address, jasonb@nextrev.com. So if there's any questions, please ask them now. Okay. Well, we're going to have another power. Okay, so I got a question coming through here. Yes, we record all of our Power Hour sessions, and we put them up on YouTube. So we would just need to basically point you in the direction of those videos. Just send me an email, and I will get you and I'll push you in the direction of those. We have a whole library, a lot of different Power Hours we've done in the past. So yes, we do. jasonb@nextrev.com. Thanks for asking. Any other questions? Okay, guys. Well, join us again next week. We're doing a whole series of tips and tricks Power Hour. So if you know some functionality already, it's a good opportunity to watch and maybe learn something you didn't already know. I mean, if you're kind of an expert at it already, maybe you'll see there'll be some overlap and you would have seen something already. But you never know. So join us again next week for our next Power Hour. Thank you and have a good weekend.